Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Geek Talk with me, James, and I've got Richard today. I wasn't entirely sure whether I was going to have Rich today because he had some meetings coming up, and when we go through the slides, it's only my picture on there, so I do apologise, dude. Your picture's not on there, but you hear him for purposes.
Mate, you're bringing the looks, so it's good.
That's good enough. Right, okay, so today's session follows on from our geeky session regarding the budget, where we decided to have a quick look backwards and a little look forwards into the year that was 2025 and the chaos and the hecticness that brought. And then to start to think about, well, if a business traditionally takes a bit of a time around the December period to reflect a little bit on itself, to reflect on their actions and the focus points about how do we get ready for 2026, and do we make the same mistakes as what 2025 was, or can we get ourselves a little bit better prepared? So we're going to take a little dive into that today. So that's where we should be. So there you go. There, well, it was a slide. Add me on it. It is what it is. So let's look back at 2025. We're going to do this month by month and take a bit of a reflection. I've got some comments up on the slide. You're about to see them, and it's my interpretation and Richard's interpretation. But these are the things that we saw. This is the trends in industry, and this is echoed by many other organizations. And if you remember, Sales Geek currently at the moment, as it lives December 2025 at the point of the recording of this video, so it won't age that well, I guess. So it's a hot topic. We're currently in 171 companies around the world. There is a geek in them, and we are solving the same problem that you are probably thinking you either had this year or you're likely to have next year as well. That's what we do. That's our job. We sit in there and we solve those problems. So let's take a look back, because this is all the learning that we have seen from thousands of companies that we've operated in over the last 12 months and from industry itself. All right with that, Rich?
Let's go.
Let's go. All right. Okay. So first one. Let's take a look back at January. It all started off with some fireworks. It started with optimism. It started with an idea that people were going to come out the traps running. And actually, we didn't. is the fair comment. So as it says there, I think, there's a lot to say about this. So we started with a lot of optimism. People come out of the December break thinking that they were going to get ready. And what we'll learn as we go through this year, there's a few things that tripped lots of businesses up, things that weren't quite ready for us, or we hadn't prepped for, planned for, etc. And it caught us out a little bit. So we started with mixed up with optimism, but there was caution in there, definitely. Inflation seemed to be easing at that particular time. The whole governmental change thing was definitely a thing. AI tools were everywhere. And I think that there's a thread here through 2024 and into 2025, the whole concept that AI, we weren't quite sure where we should be fishing and shopping in the AI space. There are more and more of those tools, and it was starting to catch people out. We didn't know what to get into, and we got into a lot of stuff. So there was a pressure building right at the start of that year, because people generally felt 2024 wasn't brilliant. So therefore 2025, we had to get the fast start. And I think our observation of this was, fast start is okay, but an unplanned fast start is just everyone's at the races but going on different tracks. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me at the start of the year was the aftermath of the last budget. I think it's really easy to forget because we've just had one. It's easy to forget the big shock to employers at the previous budget, which was around, obviously, minimum wage increases and employer NI contribution. So I think there was a little bit of people coming back in January, going into their Q4 or Q1 calendar year with the deadline of April for these increases coming in. And I think there was a lot of businesses having to budget in a very, very different way through the early part of the year. And I think that would have made it harder selling into some organizations. So I think you're right. I think there'd been some early optimism. But I think the reality was there'll be a lot of people, depending on product and service, that were competing with budgets having to be reallocated towards wage bill because of the previous budget that happened in the October before this January.
Yep. So we all got ready. We all thought we needed to come out of those traps. There were some things that we were dragging through with us. And again, we're going to riff off of this, I think, throughout this this conversation today, that there is a tendency in business, and there has definitely been a tendency in business for quite a long time in the UK. And I think this is systemic around the world a little bit. Not in some countries that we might come to that a little bit later. Certainly in the US and certainly here, we drag history with us, and we take that history of performance, of government, economy. I don't know, blame who you want. And it's the blame layer I want to drag there. And then we reflect it forward and we think, we might not do these things because of history. So that stifled the challenge, which then gets us into, well, okay, that was a month. We got where we were at with that. Then how does February start to pan out? Well, we instantly started to see, and we could feel it again from this dragging the history of economy, government, whatever you want to blame, pick your blame tool. And it started to generate buyer fatigue. And that was very visible from a consumer behavior point of view. And remember, consumer confidence also influences heavily business confidence. We are consumers before we're business owners at the end of the day. So therefore, we treat our behaviors very similar. But it was clear that whatever the initiatives out the blocks were, buyers weren't jumping to a lot of that stuff. There was a lot of special offers out there. There was a lot of get ready for 25 mentality, but people weren't getting to it. The outreach volume that we were seeing, and this is tracked throughout this financial year, actually. So outreach volume is both down and also is super fragmented. We're seeing much less capability and take up in email. We know that because of AI tools and because of better outreach platforms. LinkedIn has changed its world. We're going to come to that a little bit later. And therefore, people were getting lost in the automated cadence world. And that, if you think about it, if that's what your outreach campaign or as part of your program was, to build your sales pipeline, to build your opportunity bank, if that whole outreach, email, LinkedIn, whatever those cadences might have been, was one of your core tools. If it wasn't working for you, and it wasn't working for a great many of us across industry, you were dragging, you were struggling in that quarter onwards. What was your view?
Yeah, I think if we're guilty of something in sales, it is we tend to throw quantity at a problem before we throw quality at a problem. And I think after a tough start at the beginning of the new year for a lot of people, their solution to fixing that problem is just to do more of the things that they're already doing rather than changing tack. So I agree with you. I think in this February period and maybe even into this next month, I think we just saw people doing the same things but at higher volumes, which also then impacted the success of those things rather than finding new ways to do things. It was just throwing more proverbial at the wall.
Yeah, and that was a common, right? We saw a lot of that in 24, didn't we? The proverbial at the wall. And how many companies do we go into where it's, and I don't really like using the corporate terms of shotgun and rifle shot and stuff like that, but focused versus unfocused is definitely a theme in there. And when you're then further hindered with your outreach tools not being effective, there's a lot of a challenge in the sales and sales leadership, but then it just funnels itself through because sales isn't maximizing what it's trying to do because of the outreach. Marketing is struggling because it's struggling with the tools it's been given or trying to be given to go and do that outreach. And then leadership is failing completely because most sales leaders, as we are going to talk about throughout this session, are not trained to do the job in the first place that adequately well, and therefore they can't respond to the challenges as it presents itself. So February started to show a build-up of challenge, especially in sales outreach. Buyers and consumers were starting to demand a little bit more of that relevance and getting relevance earlier, but getting relevance geared around what's in it for me? Why should I care? And tell me the story behind it. But industry was still starting to sell the features and I don't like features and benefits, but the features of the thing rather than the story behind the thing, which is where people were, you could tell from 2024 onwards, were starting to lean into, tell me why I should be into this. And we were missing a large part of that. Okay, February. Any conclusions on February? You're good with that?
No, just what I said already, which I think, people throwing volume at the problem rather than quality.
Yeah, cool. March. So March was an interesting month, topped off either quarter one or quarter four, depending on where you are in your financial year. So, and again, we saw this a lot out in businesses that we were working with. that the first or the last quarter of your financial year was often a big disappointment. Some companies will arrange their year around the big hockey stick, right? So quarters 1, 2, and 3 might not be great, but let's go for the big Q4. That's never a great strategy. But, so a lot of businesses will back end their hockey stick. And some people were hoping that the January, February, March was the great Q1, and it wasn't. So it wasn't a great Q4 for a lot of businesses. It wasn't a great Q1 for a lot of businesses. And that has hindered a lot of stuff coming on unpicked for a lot of businesses. But what we did start to see about it from the two things that we were just talking about 2 months prior to that is businesses started to readapt, and the human side of things started to reappear. We saw more importance being led back into teams now. So our initial outreach didn't work. These didn't work. That struggled with. We're doing this. So let's reinvest. Let's get some time and effort into supporting some people. And we started to get some traction off of that. And we saw a lot in industry, actually. We see better Q2s or Q1s, depending on how your financial year runs. And we started to see better traction coming off the back of this. And that's because businesses were adapting. And I thought there was some interesting observations in industry from that side of things. What did you think?
Yeah, I think on the whole, it was around about now that people, they weren't hitting the panic button, but they were hovering their hand over the top of it. And I think primarily, again, fueled by the January thing, which was, I think there was a lot of people where they could stockpiling cash and trying to build up reserves because of the implications of the previous budget in the October. And I think there was a lot of nervous, particularly SMEs out there who were, possibly trying to put some food away for winter, should we say? Which I think it reduced spending. I think at this point in time, we saw a lot of sales organizations had a tough start to the year, did what they always do, which is just throw more volume at the problem, like we said in February, and it still wasn't working, and kind of like starting to hover the hand over the panic button, but didn't quite press it and found better ways to do things. But I think at this point, I think generally people were getting quite uncomfortable by how tough the start to the year had been. Most, if not a lot of SME CEOs that I know would have said that the calendar Q1 was one of the toughest Q1s that they'd ever had, I think, in their trading history.
Yeah. And I think, as it says back on the screen there, because of that toughness of that quarter, whether it's your 1 or your 4 or whatever the thing is, people started to pivot back into that. Let's make trust that differentiator. And we saw this a lot. The trouble with those things, the sales reality, if you read those bullet points down there, is because we relied on so much of this, get that start, get the AI, get the tools, get those things that we thought were golden threads, golden bullets, whatever the language you want to use are. And then we realized they weren't, or they were a struggle for most organizations. We're then having to rebuild those basics again, and trust trumps everything anyway. So therefore, you're almost missing a quarter because you've got to start again on a lot of this stuff. And that became very evident in industry. And I think that's become evident in the back end of this year. We're seeing this all the way through to December, January, about how businesses are so affected by that lost quarter, that this is why it's so important to make sure that your 2026, whatever it is you're doing, you're getting into, you are well prepped, better prepped for that. And you've got to maximize that trust, that differentiator, that human side of things. Yes, automation is going to be important. We're definitely going to talk about that as we go through. But personalization to how we now are going to treat 2026 based on the influencing factors as we've gone through this year are super, super important. So AI didn't replace people. We never thought it really was, but there was a drive, wasn't there, we thought it can change things. It can get rid of marketing. We can get rid of the sales. We can get rid of this. We can do this. And people were messing around with so many tools. Still, throughout the whole year, people are messing around with tools. And because people are messing around at the edges of these things, they weren't focusing on the thing that could make a change or a difference to their client base. And a lot of lost momentum happened because of that. So now we're getting into your Q2 or your Q1. Q1 or Q. Where is it? Yeah, your Q2 or your Q1, depending on where you're going to go, whichever your financial year is. So the economy's starting to drive things a little bit further now. We're into April. So as we're seeing the year progress, we're seeing the the history of what's happened from an economic standpoint. We've got Donald Trump going on in the world and that, and it's not a politics statement, but the influences of what happens globally affects everyone locally. So if you're going to make these big global statements, it will have an impact, and it has a filter. The supply chain and the economic supply chain from big business to small business should never be underestimated. And just because someone at the top shouts big words, it can have real impact to us. That generated budget signals that started to create noise around, well, where do we want to land? And the moment you start leaking these types of things, as you know, in business anyway, the moment you start telling people, we think this, we might think that, we might move it here, we might move that, people become uncertain. And so straight away from a not so clear Q1 or Q4, depending on your financial year, your next quarter, it absolutely materially slowed. And we saw this all the way through industry. Scrutiny started to increase. People got really uncertain, and things just started to stagnate because, and I will throw a little bit of a stick, again, not political, but I will throw a stick at government. Government has a duty of care to inspire a nation to drive itself forward. Growth comes from us, not what from a government does for us, although there are things that you can do to influence it, but don't hinder us. Don't step in the way and tell us, oh, we're not sure, we might this and it might be that, because we'll all wait. And that's what happened. We started waiting.
Yeah, I think from a sales perspective, because it's the start of the financial year for a lot of people, right? So whatever budgets there were got released. So I think what we then saw people seeing was stuff was coming into the funnel, opportunities were appearing, which would have created a little window of confidence before people realized that those opportunities were going to be harder to get than they were probably in any previous year, mainly because of like what you put on that slide, which is around scrutiny of where and how that budget's being used. A lot of those budgets would have been reviewed. I think the decision makers in those businesses would have felt more pressure to use those budgets very, very well and very effectively and get best value for their organization, where there's been financial pressure in their organization. So I think what we saw was more deals coming into the pipeline, but deals getting longer, and salespeople and organizations having to work harder to not just win those deals, but even move them forward in the process. And I think that was a theme then through a lot of the rest of the year. But for me, it started in April.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that problem compounded itself for a lot of businesses, because if your skills-based resources, your teams, your processes, your methodology, whatever, are not also up to scratch, their job becomes infinitely harder. And the mountain to climb became bigger and bigger and bigger at that particular point.
I think what was interesting from a sales geek perspective, we saw a number of larger blue chips start to make inquiries with us around this time. There's some big contracts we've won this year. I think a lot of that was they realized that their salespeople are just going to have to be better this year. Yeah. And I think in previous years where you don't always appreciate how much easier it has really been until it gets hard again. And I think when it gets tough, smart organizations double down on their skills.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the big observation I was picking up from the bigger organizations that were coming to us and the medium size was, well, okay, we've realized AI is not the silver bullet. It's not going to replace teams and people and things. AI is the complementary tool, but where does it still fit? How does it fit? Which means my people are still front and center, and I haven't invested in them. I have to free time and effort and capital up to do that. How do we do it? And you're now a quarter and a bit behind the curve, which is, building to a story. Oh, I don't know. I've put myself on there. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to go there.
Talking of skills.
Talking of pressing wrong buttons.
Anyone doing any Riverside training? James is Sorry,
it's the buttons. Button layout. Right. Sorry. Okay. So commercial realism got back in place, but with commercial realism, and as Richard rightly says, being more effective, not frugal, not the right word, but they're being effective with your budgets and how you do it. These things have a tail to them, right? Just because someone sits in a boardroom and says, right, this is what we're going to do now, the effects of that budget change, internally budgets, not a government budget, but your budgets as companies, they take months, weeks, months, sometimes quarters to be felt through that organization. And constantly now we're heading towards a half-year point. So we are the theme here is we are behind a curve. 2025 told us anything. The preparation that people built and the optimism and ideas that they dragged through from 24 into 25 is constantly behind the curve, not planned ready enough to get ourselves ahead of it. And we were the thought process of relying on others, and others could have been a government and a budget and all the rest of it. Others could have been tools, AI, markets, or whatever the thing is. But the reliance on something else was hindering industry at this point. So May, my birthday. So we're starting to get back to it. And the theme here is growth wasn't abandoned, it's risk managed. And we hear that a lot. And there's many years have gone by where that's been actually a term that's been coined in many businesses, isn't it? Where we don't abandon growth, we risk manage it. But in our view here at Geek, that is the wrong attitude to have as a business. It's okay, you've got to have the risk management for your cost base, you've got to employ your people, you've got to do those sorts of things, but growth is what you strive for and what you will push the boundaries to achieve. There's no such thing as you can't do it. But the moment you start to risk manage your organization and do the bare minimum, everyone follows suit. You stagnate a supply chain and a customer chain, and again, your consumers as much as your business owners, and therefore you start to slow things down. Now that can be said, okay, we got confidence, but confidence is slow. You have to get ahead of that curve because it will drag the momentum of where you're trying to be down. And therefore, we saw cautious confidence. So hiring didn't surge, and we weren't sure, again, for all the things that Rich was talking about there, that the changes in NI and all that sort of stuff. And it placed sort of aggregate bets between what can I sweat internally to get the most of what I can achieve versus what really could I go do if I bought fresh into the business, if I expanded in some way, new hire here, a new hire there. Remember our industry, right? The UK economy is 5.8 million businesses, 5.6 million businesses of December 2025, of which 99.16% of them are under 50 employees. What could you do if you knew what your cost per capita was, your productivity rate per hour or per employee was? What could you have done with one extra employee if you'd have just gone for it? It's hard to do, got to get the right person ultimately at the end of the day, but that was a big thing to drive economies. And, you know, this is a reflection piece and we're coming into it at the moment, but the news this morning, whilst we shouldn't listen to the news, unemployment is back up again, right? So people are going the opposite way, not the embracing way. And I think that that creates a challenge for us. What say thee?
I think it was around now that you said, the news headlines this morning around unemployment has continued to increase. It's been increasing now for the second half of this year. I think it was around about May that businesses were making those changes. And I think it was around about May time that some of the big headlines started to hit, where some large global employers started to make significant volumes of redundancies in their organizations, particularly in tech in the US and in Europe. And that trend has actually then continued through the rest of the year. And I think for me, there was just this horrible perfect storm of job tax, whichever way you carve it up. Basically, as an employer, we were getting tax on hiring people. We then had all the rumor mill going around the an increase in employment rights, which we're going to see first day rights coming in, which was then going to make it harder, so more expensive to hire people and harder to get rid of people that aren't effective in your organization. Then you had the third spoke of that wheel in, which was AI and this kind of like this belief that it was going to start replacing humans very, very quickly. And I think it just created this perfect storm where I think it scared a lot of employers into rehiring into some of those roles. And I do think I do worry that might not ever fully recover. You know, I do think as AI does start to fulfill its promises and people learn to live without the same volume of headcount, I think 2026 is going to be quite interesting. But I could see that unemployment number continuing to increase into 2026, but it definitely started around sort of May time 2025.
Yeah, and I think, as it says there in the sales reality, we saw a jump, not just in the sales space, but across the the leadership spectrum, if you like, in that fractional space. People bringing in interim and part-time, whichever your preferred language is. But business is starting to realize now there's a proper cross benefit to having someone with the skills, competency, and capability that you need to do whatever the departmental requires, whatever that leadership line is. But let's not fully employ them. Let's have them on a fractional basis, whether that's a consultancy thing, whether that's a geek thing, stuff that we do. But we're seeing a lot of it now, seeing it going at the NED space, going across, seeing it in finance, seeing it in sales. Now, sales was never the traditional space that you'd see the interim, but I'd say the latter part of 24 and now going into 25, it's becoming a norm. And if you think about it as an industry stat, again, I forget who did this stat, but you and I were talking about this ages ago, so it might be slightly updated. It's an employment stat. Oh gosh, where did I can't remember. Let's say the stat, and then someone might say where it came from. The average life expectancy of an average to reasonable sales director in the UK and the USA is 18 months. And if they're doing really well at their job, a sales director should make themselves a sales manager inside 6 months, really, because they've done all the stuff and they've got 20% of their layer of what they do, which is just the strategic line, but the rest of it is sales management. So we're seeing that happen a lot. And I think you're right, Rich. I think going into 2026, people are going to optimize that space a little bit further, which will be really interesting to see. So if we think it's going to happen and we're seeing unemployment to increase, that means maximizing and optimizing what you already have to be the best that they possibly can be is a 2026 focus, whether you like it or not. Okay, so it's into June. Flowers are starting to come out. Actually, June this year was awful, wasn't it not? June was a terrible year, weather-wise, I think.
Terrible year or a terrible month?
Terrible month. Sorry. June was a terrible month. It was not a great year. Sorry, it was not a great month, I think, weather-wise. But again, as we moved into this, we started to see that leadership. We're in the midway point now. We're starting to get into our halfway point of the year, or wherever you are in your financial year, and we're starting to see exposures in where leadership really is. If you think about your financial year as an organization, you've got 4 quarters, of course, and every business should use quarter on quarter and month on month as part of their trend analysis, et cetera, et cetera. But you got your H2, as it's typically termed in corporate language, to go from your half one to your half two. So go from your first part of the year to the second part of the year. This is the time you got to get ready, and it requires leadership to sort that out. And this is where the exposure lines started to pop up. And it's because most leaders and managers in industry, in sales, not in every industry, but definitely in sales, and we've harped on about this for several years now, they're not trained. Let me ask you a quick question to the audience that are watching this. When you next sit in front of a sales director, a sales manager, ask them what school of sales management or sales directorship did they go to. No one went to a dedicated school, right? We're all self-taught, broadly speaking. There are a few lucky few that go to Cranfield and other places, but most are self-taught, and therefore they're not ready for this sort of thing. And it exposed itself, and we saw it a lot as this year started to pop up. And it also exposed gaps in management, micromanagement, macro management, exposed gaps in how you wanted things to be done. And we got blockers, not performance multipliers, as it said. So the leadership gap started to fulfill itself. And therefore we saw more companies coming to us and other organizations, we were on our own on this, to say, how do we step up leadership?
Yeah, I think that was fueled by the other thing that happened going back to Q1. So I remember sort of June being what the class is the dust settling month on all the M&A activity that happens at the beginning of the year. Because again, let's not forget the gold rush to the deadline of the end of March for deals to get done because of the changes in capital gains tax. So there was a lot of people taking the opportunity to get out. When they could get out. So I think you've then got that kind of settling period afterwards. And I think by the time we hit June, there was definitely a lot of those acquisitive businesses had started to realize what they did and didn't have within their teams, maybe in some consolidation around team as well, but also, upskilling, certainly within the leadership capacity as well. Yeah,
definitely. So starts to get a little bit better though, right? Get into July. And I think although we were seeing threads of this, I think there's definitely a space as we got into July and businesses that we were operating in for sure, that we saw people getting to grips with AI, starting to understand what is the tool, what is the right space, what is the right thing that they want it to do. It's an enablement, not the replacer. And I think we've got over that period of AI will replace everything. Now AI enables things or individuals or CRMs or whatever. But the key here is data has to be clean. And that is still a systemic challenge in industry and sales anyway, is what is firstly define clean data, and then how do you manage it, police it, operate it, and then when you have clean data, how do you utilize it? So we were definitely starting to see some really good stuff going out in industry now with people that were adopting the right tools for the right purpose, aiding forecasting, aiding marketing, aiding prospecting, aiding the things that they needed it to do. Lots of different tools out there to be able to do that. But we started to get better quality information, which also helped leadership, I think, ask different questions. So when I see companies today, I do hear and see and experience different question sets by managers that are now get more tuned to what do I got to ask and how do I need to ask it when it comes to AI. So I think there was a better mentality and operational fit towards AI. We certainly got our act a little bit more together towards AI as well, like many other organizations, working it all out. But you're just over halfway through a year. So, you've got half a year to maximize that.
Yeah. And I guess the reality of, it's funny, like I find a lot of businesses get obsessed by conversion rates and actually completely lose sight of deal length as well. And I think it's probably around about now that people were realizing they were potentially dealing in different deal lengths, and deal length can affect your annual revenue figures like conversion rate can. And people lose sight of that sometimes. You can have a decent conversion rate and a bad deal length, and not get what you need to get as a result of it. I think generally it's around about July where salespeople start shoving deals out into September, because we're going to enter the black hole of this kind of weird 6-week period over the summer where no one buys anything ever. Obviously, I don't subscribe to that, but if you listen to most salespeople, they'll tell you that nothing gets done in that period of time. So yeah, deals were starting to get shoved out into September. And obviously the cliff edge is end of September, is the end of half year for those that are on the tax year. And I think possibly that was the start of maybe some forecasts getting missed actually around kind of like the end of H1.
Yep, that is so true. So true. Right. And to your point, now we get into those 2 weird months, right? The August, September months. So this is where we started to see this. When geeks are in businesses, we look at that half year period, especially the holiday period, the traditional holiday period that is the UK anyway. And that excuse system starts falling in, as Richard rightly has just said there. So we started to see inefficiencies creep in, or where the inefficiencies existed, they were exposed. And I think lots of organizations were getting caught out with this particular thing. We've lost a quarter. We're reorganizing and re-engineering ourselves for the second quarter. We're getting through that, which is what this is here. You're halfway through your quarter. You're starting to get the grips with AI, starting to get the grips with the toys and the tools. Now, holiday periods are starting to reflect on us, changes in the way that our cyclical year runs, and now people are like focusing on something different. Now we've got a different worry, which is time. Well, what are you doing with the time? What's the sales cycle look like? What's going on in here? This is not an AI thing. This is now what's going on with people's time and effort and how you're starting to run that. So we started to see some organizations maintain some momentum. They built it up. They were tracking it through with AI. They're doing well in July, and some organizations managed to pull that through. But as it says there, a lot of organizations were starting to struggle even further. And I'm going to be looking forward in later 2026, actually, to do some analysis, because we need 2025 data. A lot of it comes out from the OBR and other places as well, about how many organizations missed forecasts. So there are studies and surveys done to industry about forecasting, pipeline, and all that sort of stuff. And there's some really interesting statistics that come off the back of it. And I can't remember, I'd have to go and look at it quickly, but I think the 2024 pipeline businesses that missed forecast at the half year period was something like 66% of businesses were off their forecast by the half year point, which is like yikes. Now, we don't know by how much. That could have been 1%, that could have been a number of percent, but 66% of businesses not on a forecast at a half year point is a big thing. But here's some of the reasons why.
It's really unlike salespeople to overcommit on a forecast.
I know what you're saying. We don't do any of that, right?
No. Well, I find it hard to comment in August because I spent most of it hiding in the Alps in my motorhome.
You did, yeah. You had a good August.
Like that, pretending this SHIT show of the UK economy wasn't really happening.
Yeah.
But no, I think the only comment I would make is that I think by the time we hit the end of August, I know this will tip us over into September. I always find that's it's funny, isn't it? I always find that the financial year, although it's only 5 months to the end of August, I never see the financial year as 6 months and 6 months. I think it's 5 and 7. Because I think people come back from that holiday period at the end of August and go, holy hell, we are, Christmas is now not too far away. Year end feels closer than it did a few months ago, and we felt like we were just getting started. And like you said, I think we saw a lot of, let's just say, deals not moving quickly enough from the left column to the right column in people's deal flow. And I think maybe the reality of setting in that maybe they'd overcommitted. And again, that's an issue for business, right? Because if the forecasts remain optimistic and you budget against those forecasts, often cash then starts to become an issue in organizations. And I think probably that was starting to bite around about now would be my gut feeling at the end of August.
Funny you say that, because there it is as it materializes through September, right? So data-driven storytelling. We've been harping on about this. Now, there's only so much you want to do on the data-driven storytelling because data is only ever as good as the information you've got, but people get into grips with AI, remember? So there was some really clever stuff going on with AI intelligence tool. ChatGPT was growing up a little bit. Was that 5.2 still, or was it 5.1 back then? Not sure. But as always, your ChatGPT or your Gemini. Gemini was now the strong competitor to ChatGPT. So people are leveraging these tools and starting to have proper insights to this sort of stuff. Now, that led to a few really good positives that we have seen, and we are seeing it track through this sort of period up to now. We're getting better qualification, whether you're using a process, a methodology, whether you're using AI data tools or whatever the thing is, but we're starting to see leaner, better, more effective side of things in that sort of space. This is driving tighter pipelines, all good news. And what we start to see now is people are really getting their act together in the core elements, that lead qualification, that win rate, deal quality, etc. But we're 7, 8, 9 months into a year. This should have been January 1st or January 6th, depending on when you went back to work, right? So the whole scattergun approach, which we started off the year with, for most businesses, is now really refined. It's gone for like that and is now sort of down into here, this mode. But we're 6, 7 months into, if not more, into your financial year. So that only means that we're building momentum now. So that's good, right? That hockey stick is now coming through. And I think there are some things in there, but hold on a minute, because there's some other stuff about to happen. Rich, what else was your observation in September?
It was a strange September for me. I've always seen, I suppose, from a sales geek perspective, September, November, for nearly 9 years now have been our busiest months. And so I've always seen September as the getting stuff done month. People come back from holidays and stuff like that. It's like, right, okay, Christmas isn't that far away. Let's, we need to crack on. But that was massively offset by us then being told that our UK budget has been kicked down the can to the back end of November. And I think you had this, there was one hand, you kind of got urgency over here. People come back from summer holidays, let's get stuff done. But that was met with, I think, nervousness and reservation of why have our government kicked the budget out till the third week of November? What's going to happen? What's coming? And I think we saw at the point where we thought the brakes were going to come off in terms of kind of deal flow. I think actually they didn't come off and maybe even got a little bit tighter on the rims of the wheels and slowed things down even more. And I think that wasn't helped at all by all of the speculation around what was eventually going to come in November, which we'll get to that later.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it played itself out on what we were seeing across the board, both here domestically and in the US. Remember, a lot of what happened to us here in the UK was highly influenced about what was being said in the US, about how their economics were being driven. It's starting to plateau a bit. We're starting to get more understanding of how that economic driver was pushed and pulled. But equally, what that led to us now is people needed to be more trust-based, which is the right place to be, right? We want it to be, if I can't trust that, I need to trust you. Everyone needs to trust someone. Now, there's a degree in that trust in terms of poor trust to great trust, but everyone has to trust somebody with something. Therefore, we're starting to see organizations and sales departments, leaders and salespeople drive their organization towards that trust-based messaging, and leveraged off of the back of all of that uncertainty that we're dragging through and the constant messaging that is still flowing out of the US that I'm going to penalize you for this, do this, that, tariff this, tariff that, etc. So trust the few, optimize what you could at that point. And that started to really hammer a theme then from October.
Yeah, I think the people that managed to achieve in this period of the year was people that were able to I suppose create certainty in a period of uncertainty. And I think that comes through, again, great relationship building, just being a really good human being who's an expert in other human beings. I think it's probably around now that people realize, again, you definitely can't throw volume at the problem. You've got to throw quality and depth of relationship at the problem and take away the concerns and fears from people. And again, just to echo what I said earlier, as we stepped into October, you couldn't pick up a newspaper or jump onto a news website without a rumor about something that was going to happen in the subsequent budget, which I think, unfortunately, both at a consumer level and at a business level, really knocked confidence. And I think, again, sales teams were having to work even harder to get certainty into a marketplace that had become very uncertain again.
Yep, definitely. Which brought us to our budget. But I'm not going to put the budget up there because we did a budget, right? We did the budget review, and it was a budget that I think I coined rather nicely in a post I did on LinkedIn yesterday, which said it promised little and it delivered even less. And I think that was broadly it. There was some things in there that, every industry, every sector, every market will go, I got something from that. But broadly speaking, it didn't do what it's going to try to keep away from the politics, but the government here and the government in the US, governments globally, I guess, will say our job is to fuel growth in an economy, and it has not done that. So the question then becomes, how do you grow an economy? How do you grow yourself? How do you do what you're going to do? And the bottom line is, ladies and gents, it's the same truth as always has been. It's on us. It is on your own business, your own sales teams, your own capability, your own customer sets. And therefore, I think people got out of that. Oh, we were waiting for this big white hope. It never materialized. So people started to realize, okay, let's get into it. Let's do our thing. And we're definitely seeing that with businesses today. I mean, this is November, so we're in December ourselves as we make this recording now. If I look at companies that a lot of our geeks are working with today, they've got a we're just going to do it attitude now. There's nothing to rely on, so let's just do our own thing. What do you think? I
totally agree. I think we hate uncertainty, right, as human beings. Yeah. And everyone took a bit of pain at the budget. The budget did dominate November. There's no two ways about it. I guess as we're recording this, it was less than a month ago. But up until the point it happened, everyone was just, it was just the unknown. And there was so much nonsense that came out in the newspapers that most of which never came to fruition either. And I think once it happened, everyone kind of took that little bit of pain, and then the reality is, right, okay, there's no white horse coming to save me here. This is on me. And actually, again, that's probably been reflected in where we're at as a business. That strangely led to a record month in what was a strange month with the budget and stuff. But I think we've already seen some of the brakes coming off in certain areas. I think it'd be fair to say more now than what we would have thought would have happened back in September because of it. So, yeah, I think it was that, weirdly, although everyone took a bit of pain, and I suppose if you're an employer, things just got a bit more expensive for you, but at least you know what it is, right? You know what it is. You know what the next 12 months looks like now, and you can budget and you can plan for that. So now it's just a case of just get on with it. You've got all your excuses are out the way now. Just get on with it.
Yeah. Which brings us to December, right? Here we are, about to go into the holiday festive period. And it is genuinely, I think, a lot of businesses, we certainly are, as Geek, we sit in rooms together or down in a cafe or whatever, and reflection and reset are the priorities, which is why we're doing this particular podcast, because The key things that we put on there, we could have put all sorts of stuff that talked about challenging government and, the blame issue. Our job as Sales Geek and the focus of our attention is the sales department. What changed in the sales engine? The reflection and reset, broadly speaking, let's do the reflection bit at the moment, is I think lots of people were assessing in different ways the capabilities gap. Now, was that capabilities on leadership? Was it capabilities on sales department? Is it capabilities on my CRM, my systems, my processes? But there's a lot of capabilities reflection going on. People are trying to understand, what did we learn through that period? We lumped and bumped our way through that particular year. And if we're to not make the same mistakes again, you're going to have to make some material changes. You've got such a narrow window to prep yourself ready for January the 4th or 6th. I'm not even sure what day's the first day back to work this year or next year.
For a lot of people, the 5th, yeah.
Yeah, 5th for a lot of people. So the capability gap is a big thing. So if you are going to sit down and reflect, and we are going to do some get ready for 2026 in a minute, but if you are doing that, we certainly did it. Rich and I are doing it quite often, is where's the capabilities? And that's in us as well. That's in Richard's capability, mine. As leaders, it's our responsibility, etc., to make the success of this company, to make the success for everything that we do. But we have to reflect on that. What did we learn through these things? What does it mean to sales departments, divisions, products, services, pricing? I don't know. It's everything. But you can't boil an ocean when you start to do it. There's a lot in your organization, as there is in ours, that works and works well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. It's tuning the things that you genuinely believe will get you the bigger gains going into 2026. What's your thought?
Yeah, but I suppose, it's the old adage, right? A business can only grow to the capacity of its leadership. So I think people are realizing that in a tougher market, and 2025 has been a tougher market, I think most of the economic forecasts suggest that there will be some growth in 2026 and beyond, but it's not going to be like kind of pre-pandemic levels of kind of consistent, stable growth. So smart organizations are going to be more efficient. I think they're going to be more effective. I think they're going to find ways to get more value from the cost base that they've already got and the wage bill that they've already got, which is around upskilling both its leaders, but also I think across the wider team. And I think for me, on that reflection point, looking backwards, I always believe that sometimes when you have a tough period, it doesn't feel like a gift. It doesn't, does it? Sometimes it can completely suck. But actually it is a gift. It forces you to look at things that you don't look at when things are good. It forces you to get better in areas that you don't get better in when things are good. It forces you to refine processes that you don't look at when things are good. It forces you to review skill levels in your business that you don't do when things are good. And I think often it takes a couple of losses to force people into getting better. And I think people have had their hands forced a little bit through this last year. And I think, yes, no one's going to come and help you necessarily go into 2026. I think, is it 1.5% growth, I think, was forecasted off the back of the budget for the UK next year.
I'll be amazed if that happens.
Yeah, but that means that people have got to do it themselves, right?
Exactly, yeah.
There isn't a rising tide of the economy to move you up. You're going to have to do it on your own.
Yeah, agreed. All right, okay, so that was a quick summary of 2025.
Quick, 48 minutes.
Okay, fair enough. The summary of 2025 for me is we were waiting, and we were everything I think most of us were doing, not everybody, and I can't put every business. I'm doing a reflection of all the types of businesses that we operate, bearing in mind most businesses are small businesses. We were reactive. We were waiting for something to happen, waited for it to happen, saw it happen, and then reacted to it happening. And therefore, you're always chasing your tail. So if you want to get ahead of that, knowing that the budget hasn't really delivered anything, government hasn't really done what it promised to do, and that's no criticism on the government. They got a tough job. Leave it be. It's on us. So if you do want to see a 1.5% or greater growth in the economy, it's not going to come because of whatever the government says. It's going to come because of what industry, the 5.5 million businesses in the UK, do to grow themselves. You grow yourself, you sell more services, both domestically and internationally, growth occurs. Then GDP goes up, then productivity goes up. It happens because we do it, not because somebody in 10 Downing Street or 11 Downing Street says, we're going to take 1p off of this or 2p off of that. And that. It makes no difference to you. There's some minor things that it impacts on you, but it's about what your sales department do and what you as leaders do to shape your business. It's on you, ladies and gentlemen, is what I'm trying to get to. So some top tips and things to think about to get yourself ready for 2026. So this should be a checklist, all right? Feel free to write this stuff down or at least freeze frame the video and then pose yourself the question. Ask it of yourself and ask it of your teams. This is reasonably high level because I've gone very broad to try and capture every business, right? We would very much narrow this down if I was speaking to very specific sectors or markets, etc. So the first two things that you got to think about. Number one, you've got to start with your strategy and the clarity of the strategy. Now, we at Sales Geek don't like using the word strategy that often because it sounds big, it sounds out there, it sounds too far away, but it isn't. It's a set of directions and roadmaps for you, your business, your people, and everyone that you're going to need to operate within to get you from point A to point B. And it is the strategic plays and playbooks and themes that you're going to operate on. And there are some core things in there. And this is Richard's favorite subject. So I'm going to let Richard tackle this one. And I will riff off of the sales systems and pipeline and health check. So Rich, give us the top tips in that box there.
On the top box?
Yeah. Strategy, clarity, gold rocks.
I'm going to try not to oversimplify it, but I think I'm probably going to end up oversimplify it. Just pick one and go for it. Like stop floating around waiting for something else to happen. Stop waiting for the newspaper headlines. Lock yourself away in a room with the right people. Come up with a strategy and a goal and a plan, and JFDI, right? Just effing do it. Like just go after it, and I suppose just don't allow yourself to get spooked and just turn the newspapers off and have your own plan and stick to that. Would be my general strategic overview.
Fair enough. Take that. I like that one. High level. If I'm to pick one in that box, though, I spend a lot of time with this with organizations. So revenue vehicles, you know what you sell and you know what it's worth. You know what it costs you. You know the speed by which it generates an invoice and the speed by which it generates cash, right? So revenue vehicles, speed to market, know which ones that if you push, pull, or leverage them in some way or another has the better, most agile effect to your business. Just because you sell a thing doesn't necessarily mean that you have to doggedly stay at that lane in that thing if you know that's not the thing that's going to make you your margin or your profit this year. So know what your revenue vehicles are, and also that's existing vehicles. 2026 is an unknown right now. We're not there. We're not in January the 1st. What else could you be doing? What else is there in your kit bag, your kit box? Not everyone's going to affect this, right? Not everyone can do this. I get it. But you'd be surprised because we surprise businesses a lot when we go into them. When we look at their commercial offerings, about how many different commercial offerings a business actually just does have that they're just not thinking about. So thinking about and really concentrating on what does your market want? What can you drive into market, and what does the market expect? And prepare your revenue vehicles. Yeah, I'd focus on that quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, there's a time where you need to find customers for product, but a great way to grow, certainly if things are slightly more challenging, is finding products for customers where you already have relationships, and that potentially for 2026 will be a more frictionless path for people.
Yeah. So the second one, the sales systems pipeline. There's some in here that are dry subjects, right? But they are disciplined subjects. And what we learned looking backwards was people, organizations, leaders from around about that August, September period onwards are getting more disciplined about, well, we're on our own. We've got to do this. Let's get our act in order. So sales systems, and you should have systems. I don't mean you've got to go out and buy all these big things. Most people are small organizations. But is that a Monday.com? Is it a very basic CRM system? Is it a very basic process from lead generation to customer turnaround, from churn management? I don't know what these things are for your organization, but you should be reviewing what the sales systems ought to be that maximize the effectiveness of people. Don't just have stuff for stuff's sake. And therefore, what AI tools, and we're going to talk about AI in a minute, could support to leverage those things, speed them up in some way. Now, pipeline health is obviously going to be everything. You should be monitoring, maturing, developing, and analyzing your pipeline on a constant basis. If you have a CRM system, stick it in a bleeding CRM system. Don't have it sat on an Excel spreadsheet or in a notebook somewhere. Hashtag just saying to people listening to this. I'm wondering who's listening. Anyway, you let the data show you what's going on, lead and lag times, all that sort of great stuff. And when you think about your KPIs and your OKRs, your key or core, your key performance indicators and your OKRs, objectives and key results, what ones turn dials? But to know what dials to turn, you had to have your strategy and the clarity of that strategy in place. Don't have KPIs and OKRs for any old reason. If they don't turn a material dial in your business, that is either improving the people, the processes, the teams, the infrastructure, the culture, or the general operation, don't have it. Don't be reporting on anything and everything for just some reason, but get them right. And funnel velocity analysis is a constant analysis from all businesses. How do you go from here to here, the optimal way and the smoothest way through your revenue vehicles? And it only happens because you study this stuff. If you're just going to assume things and scattergun it, then you're always going to get what you always got. But get a discipline to this stuff. Most organizations don't do it. Even the biggest organizations don't do it. And it mind boggles me that. But do it. Right. Next two. Yeah, the drier ones, right? So data, CRM, visibility, AI, and technology readiness. So if AI, we were getting better at it last year, or this year still, technically, 2025, next year it should be for a core level of AI preparedness and tools and data and CRM. We should just be at it at that point. We should know what the tools are. We should know what they deliver for us. We should know what the expectation is of us and them, and we need to get the right things in place. I don't think 2026 is a year of trial and error. You've done a lot of that. Let's get the right tools in. They're always going to change though, right? There's more AI tools coming out on a daily basis than there is anything else. But stick with some things and test them out for a while rather than just changing for changing's sake.
Look, they're easier to use as well already, and that's just going to, I suppose, the user intuitiveness, if that's a word, of these tools is improving all the time. So therefore, they just inherently get easier to use. So yeah, I agree. I think there's probably a lot of people have been playing with stuff through 2025, but I think 2026, yeah, double down on the stuff that works in your business, but also you've always got to keep half an eye open for other new stuff. But I think just going back up, change the first point around data. I know you sort of touched on this a little bit, but like for me, data is key. Data is going to tell you everything you need to know in your business, and you should be aiming to make more data-driven decisions in your organization. But you can't do that if you're using CRM. You can't get out your CRM unless your people are using it, and unless they're putting good information into it. You're not going to get the data back out that you need either. So hygiene, like you say, and discipline around the use of those systems in order to produce data, which you can then use AI to help interpret and create a narrative on that data as well. So that kind of supercharges it, but you need the data to start with, and that starts with CRM.
I totally agree. Data is going to be everything. So get your decision-making criteria, at least at the very minimum, data influenced. Data-led is better, but data influenced for everything, so that you can test those assumptions. And that's even for the smallest of organizations, right? It doesn't. You could be a one-man band, pre-revenue, just trying to get going. There's a world of data today that you'll be utilizing. For example, social media. I suspect so many small young businesses are entrepreneurial based, and rightly so, and they will advertise their wares and what fors and warehouse on, for example, Instagram or TikTok or something like that. It doesn't have to be the old world of LinkedIn, but there's a world of data that you can get off of that. What are you doing on meta ads? What are you doing on the GDN? All of these sorts of things that you need to learn and understand, but all of that operates from data. So understanding what data does for you, whether you're on your own as a small business, micro business owner, or whether you're the biggest of biggest, data will inform a lot of what you do and how you approach it. And do it up front and do it daily. Because if you're not, you're going to be reactive to that data pattern a month or a quarter in arrears all the time. So think about the right tools, get for the right purpose. AIs are team members now. They're not the replacement tools. We've got over ourselves on that, right? These organizations that were ringing you all up last year, they rang us up, they rang everyone that we ever knew anyway, ringing them up saying, oh, we can replace your marketing team for what turns out to be practically the same price that you would pay for a marketeer. And it didn't quite do the human aspect of the same job. We're past that. Yeah, there might come a day where that's genuinely a thing, but right now it isn't. So get it out your heads and focus that AI is a leveraged tool to assist and speed up processes and optimization, especially if you get the right tools integrated into your CRM. That is where, marginal, and if not even marginal gains, where laps of a Formula One circuit can be achieved ahead of someone on a push bike because you've managed to leverage those tools together.
Good I think if you're a scaling business, it should slow down your path to hire, I guess. So if you've got an existing team, AI should mean that you're not having to add bodies into that team at the same speed that you might have to done previously.
Yeah, agreed. So next we're getting into some of the human capital. And if I could really lean into people looking at what everyone's done in 2025 and 2024 and 2023 and 2022, we're a bit of a broken record on this one. But your investment into your sales capability and skills and your investment into your leadership team, including yourself, if you are the leader. So if you're the leader of your business and you are responsible for the sales side of your business, whether you're the salesperson, because you're a smallest of organizations, you are the self-appointed CEO, and you're also your chief revenue officer, right? And you're also your chief marketeer. Therefore, the person in that business that needs the most investment is you. So invest in yourself. Spend time learning. Spend time educating yourself, picking up the tips and tricks that others around you are leveraging, and get yourself developed. Now, if you're an organization as well that have people beneath you, so let's say you've got some sales teams, you've got some sales managers, always remember, ask the question, what school of sales management and sales leadership did you go to? Most people are going to say, I never went to one. I'm self-taught. And when they're self-taught, it's often YouTube channels, reading books. Might have worked with a geek. They'll be infinitely better when they work with a geek. But there'll be other things that they've done. They won't be the rounded, finessed animal that you will need them to be. And therefore, the business has a responsibility to invest heavily into sales capability skills for people and the leadership line. Whatever that leadership line is, put your money into them, put your effort into them, put your time into them.
And I would say, mate, furthermore, if you don't, they will leave you to go and work for someone else who will. And again, I think in a market where people have got to be better, but also, I think again, with what's happening with AI as well, I think great salespeople become even more precious commodities. So I think if you've got good people in your team, if you don't invest in them and they don't feel invested in, then you might find that they're by this time next year working somewhere else that does.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And we already seeing that in 2025. And I hear it and see it in businesses every day that I'm operating in, all our geeks do. So up there it says, develop the golden 3 C's and 3 T's. So this is a sales geek thing when it comes to something we look at when it comes to salespeople and sales leaders. So the 3 C's stands for confidence, capability, and credibility. So capability is the core of sales. Sales is a profession like anything else. Teach them the high levels and high standards of that profession. So teach them that capability. Credibility, it's what they've delivered. It's what they've done. It's what you've done as social proof in everything that you sell or do as a business. And their ability to leverage that credibility to be that trusted, hate the word trusted advisor, but the person that somebody else will trust and rely on to tell them, weave them the story as to why they should buy your service over something else. It's all important. Get those 2 things right and you build confidence. There's nothing more seductive in the world of sales than a very confident, capable, and credible salesperson who's on their game, knows their profession, is at ease with themselves, their business, their products, and their tools around them, and just makes it an easy thing to do because we like easy things to do. So invest in those 3 C's. The 3 T's are your tone, your tact, and my favorite one, tenacity. If you're not chasing anything and everything, well, you don't have to chase anything, but you need to chase the things that are important and ask for the business, whatever those things are. Stop sending out proposals unless you really have to, but get the business in. Tenacity is everything. Stop leaving it to, I sent them an email. How many of your organizations do that? How many people sit there and go, yeah, I've chased them up. I sent them an email. Did you ring them? Did you actually speak to them? Have you eyeballed them? Have you sent them a video note, a WhatsApp note, or whatever the things are? but get the communication language patterns working and talk to people.
Yeah, it's the only way to connect at the depth that you're going to need to connect at in a more challenging market. It's not even a negotiable anymore. And you talked about attractiveness, and nothing's more attractive than stories to a brand and organization either. But I think that human connection, or that animalistic connection, you cannot afford for that to not be at the deepest level it can be in 2026. You can't afford to have lazy salespeople, lazy sales function. It just won't be good enough. It will not cut the mustard in 2026.
Yeah, agreed. And the last one before I go on to the next slide, and I'm going to leverage on it because I've repeated the word 3 times. Develop your leaders, including yourself, as I've already said. But if you've got sales line management underneath you, let me give you a scary stat, okay? We're in 180 odd companies at the moment as of December 2025. Over 2/3 of those companies have sales management and leadership in them, sales directors, VP of sales, high leveraged language, paid decent money, I guess, for a lot of these organizations, and they lack the skills. And we're in there filling those skills gap, which is great. That's what we're here for. That's why we exist. So don't be afraid, leverage that, reach out to us, and we'll come and help your boys and girls. Because again, which school of sales leadership does anyone go to? Probably not for many of them. But this is where you will win and lose. If you've got the most amazing sales leaders, including yourself, if you are that sales leader, if you're the business owner, then invest in yourself. Now, if that means getting somebody else in, going, watching YouTube channels, reading books, I don't care what you do, but educate yourselves. Prefer you come to the Geeks because we've got 1,500 years of combined experience of the smallest, mediumest, the biggest of businesses around the world, and we know how to leverage your sales leaders for you. But get them ahead of the game, because if they're ahead of the game, you will be ahead of the game. They're the one person at a steering wheel with their foot on the accelerator that can do stuff for you. Develop your sales leaders. I might have said that a bit too much. Okay, and the last couple, I think. Yes, right. So your resource model and cost discipline, that's quite dry, but you need decent resource modeling. You need to understand whether you're the smallest of the businesses or the biggest of the businesses, you're going to have to leverage and deploy resources tactically as well as strategically throughout your year. And when you can bank certain resource allocation, whether that's finding capacity in the marketing team, whether that's finding leverage in your pricing structures, your models for deployment of services, whatever those things are, whether it's departmental resources or your people resources, find models that you can leverage through the year, because you're going to have to push and pull some of those levers, which also then means you're going to have to work out what your cost discipline looks like. Where are you going to spend those valuable bucks domestically and internationally to get the best out of those resource pools? You've got to work that through. You can't just make that up. You can, from an agility point of view, make something up on a Monday morning, go, right, we're going to do this, we're going to try things. But I mentioned things like meta ads, whether that's a thing for you or not. But if it is, or something you're even considering, that requires a resource pool. Someone's going to have to go and do something with that, and it requires something within cost modeling to go and afford to go and do it. Testing it, alpha, beta, all that sort of great stuff. But you have to do that. And it also means that your sales leadership needs to match your business maturity. If you're a small business and all the rest of it, you don't need sales directors. You really don't. And I know that's a really contradictory term from us, because we provide part-time sales directors, but we provide them on a fractional basis. If you need a proportion of something, get the proportion of that thing, not the whole thing. Maybe that's not what you need as an organization. Leverage where you're going to spend some of that money into more innovative areas in your business that might turn dials in a more quicker fashion. Rich, want to say anything about that one?
Yeah, I think, because of what happened, I think early on last year, throughout this year, I'm already in 2026, but what was going through this year, a lot of people would have felt a gross margin squeeze, and therefore the way to protect net margin is to be more efficient with your resource model. And I think, again, once upon a time, people were able to be a bit more one-dimensional with that, but I think people almost need to be four-dimensional now, which is kind of the traditional resources. There's then fractional resources, there's offshore resources, and then there's AI agency that can enable growth in teams in a different way. And I think businesses now, we're going to have to be in 2026 far more rounded in their approach to what resource looks like now versus what it's looked like for the previous decade.
Yeah, I totally agree. Again, if you go back, if you listen to these things here, go back to where we started in January, February, March, and all the way through the year as we were talking about it. These are the things that will get you ahead. These are the things that plan and prep how you will be more efficient. And again, I'm leveraging all of this stuff for the amount of businesses that we're in across the UK, USA, India at the moment, where this stuff just isn't even a consideration, even in a mature business. It's fascinating to see, but it's the easiest things that get you ahead. The execution and operating rhythm is also something that we can, I think, I see it in business a lot. You can easily forget this because we get into the weeds of our day jobs. We get into the execution model. But what are the weekly cadences? When are you meeting and for what reason? What purpose do you meet for? And most importantly, you can have all these meetings till it comes out your ears. But what was the benefit? What dial or rock or whatever the thing was in your business, did it move forward to have that meeting? Don't all just be sat in a room just because you think you need to be sat in a room. There has to be a purpose for what you're in there for. And as Richard's favorite one there is, always be on time for those meetings. We're always late to go to a meeting and we're always early to want to end it, right? So just give it the time, but give it the right time for the right meetings. And I strongly emphasize you should sit down over the Christmas period and you should work out what's my weekly, monthly, and quarterly cadence. How does it roll up to my top? What are those meetings? Who have I got in there? Because I can tell you as a frustrated sales leader myself of the past, I've attended some stuff that I just don't need to be in. Rich has attended stacks of stuff he doesn't need to be in. Get the right things in the right place with the right people in the right room for the right reason. You'll get much more done.
Yeah, I guess the old cliche quote, which is one of my favorite, Einstein, if you do the same things in the same way and expect different results, you're insane. So I think every business has a rhythm and a flow. And I think sometimes you've got to test what you do and try things in a different way. And I think if you're sat here now on the 16th of December and you've already got all of your internal meetings locked in for the next 12 months and it's at the same cadence as it was for the previous 12 or 24, I would be encouraging people to just test that and just try some different things and see whether a different beat of a rhythm can actually make you more effective as an organization.
So that you can all read those bullet points and you can all infer what they mean to you. But I do want to just leverage the last one, and then I think we're done for today. No one is coming to save you, so save yourselves. Yes, you can reach out and get external support. And we are Sales Geek, and we are definitely here to help you. We're here to help your business, your salespeople, your sales leaders, definitely. But the economy is not going to save you. You are going to save the economy. The government's not going to save you. They can barely save themselves. So don't rely on that. To save yourself, you have to know what you do, what you're going to do, and have an execution plan that works, operates, and then go do it. Learn the mistakes of 2025. There are a few. And then understand how are you going to do things differently in 2026. And if you want help with that, then reach out. No obligation, all the rest of it. Happy to give you some advice and all the rest of it about your business. Do let us know. But no one's coming to save you, so please do save yourselves. Any final comments, Rich, before I move on to the last thing?
I guess just on that same point, I think we've seen lots of sort of almost paralysis in 2025 in some respects, and that comes through. A lot of that's been driven by fear and anxiety of a future negative state that in some cases wasn't even a thing. And I think that the best way to fix anxiety is to move towards it with action. So yeah, I just echo that. Just go do stuff. Like keep moving forwards. And the future might feel a little bit different at that.
Definitely like that. Future might feel different. The future is what you make it at the end of the day. And I know it's an old adage and it's a bit of a cliche, but stop relying on other factors. Rely on yourself and bring others in to support you. They shouldn't be doing it for you. They should be supporting you to take that journey. Okay, well, anyway, there you go. That's our 2025 review. We did the budget. That was exciting or not, I don't know. We just looked back and looked at some of the lessons learned There are valuable lessons in that. You should look at, just even if you mute the voice, don't listen to our voices, that's fine. But read those slides. There are definite cadence beat notes in there that you can learn from of what we saw happen in 2025. And those, the 6 boxes that come up, the things that you need to be thinking about and reflecting on through your Christmas or holiday period about what are you going to come into January 2026 with, and prep your business so that either your Q1 or your Q4 is absolutely outstanding, so that you're getting ready and get fit for 26. You have to do those things. If you're going to sail through the Christmas period and not spend any time prepping that sort of stuff, it is a wasted opportunity. So we've got more of these coming up. That's the end of that particular one. There is this QR code there. You're welcome to go and scan that, and you can take our free health check. I don't like using the word free or the term health check, but there you go. I'm going to put them in anyway, because that's pretty much what it is. And it's a discipline. It's a maturity model that looks at your business, analyzes and benchmarks against other businesses across the UK, and tells you where you sit on a 1-to-6 ratio across all those core disciplines and core areas. Why don't you take the test? Ask yourself honestly, am I 1? Am I 6? Whatever the thing is. And it's okay to be a 1. It's okay to be a 2. It's okay to be a 6. But whatever it is, have a plan for it. Have an idea about how do I close that gap, if it's a gap that needs to be closed in the business. So make sure you're doing that. Other things that you want to look out for in 2026, because there's some really exciting stuff coming up. I'm going to get rid of my face on there, because my face up there's twice. Let's just do that one. That's better. There's some really good stuff. We've got a load of big webinars coming out through the year. So there's some really interesting stuff that we're getting into, insight into leadership, management, negotiation, all sorts of other great things, all sales related. And then something new for 2026 that we are focusing very heavily on this year, investing a lot of time and effort, is podcasts. So our podcast series will be released, and we've got 2 podcasts for everybody. So there's a dedicated one just with that man there, the CEO, and he's going to have guests and people come along. Maybe you would like to be a guest on the podcast series. It's a bit like, who's that podcast series? The CEO, Diary of a CEO. This will be the Diary of a CEO if you got it from Wish.
Sheen. other budget retailers are available.
I'll just come up with that. Anyway. But it will be really informative, and but it's all things sale, right? All things sales leadership, and the sales side of things. So it will be a fascinating journey to listen to those through the year. And then I'm doing a series myself, which aren't on video. Richard's will be on video. Some nice lighting. It'll all be very cool. Mine are all just going to be audio. You can download them from any of the podcasting sites, where I'm just going to talk about constantly what it means for effective leadership, sales management, sales operations, systems and processes, all the things that we've been talking about there, so that you can either listen and go, oh, that was really interesting, or you can listen and go, we should be doing that. And it's just there to help you, our gifts for you, to make sure you're doing the right things for you for 2026. So look out for all that sort of stuff. Rich, as always, lovely to see you. We're going to go and get some eggnog lattes. It's lunchtime, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much, everybody. Yeah, have fun. Bye now.